Today we're going to be concluding our series on the simple gospel, and today I wanted to talk to you about being content. Being content in who we are because of what God has placed in us and what God has given us and sustained us with. And you know, I don't mean to step on any toes. I heard last week that I stepped on some toes too, but I don't know. I feel like maybe this one might step on more toes, so I'm sorry in advance. But I just want to talk about being content and not having this desire or this covetousness, this drive, this thing in us that pulls to want more or just to want things, but just to seek God and who He is and to want Him because He's the only thing that we need. Amen? I mean, is anybody ever, you know, if you ask yourself this question, you know, again, don't mean to step on any toes, but if you say, my life would be better if only I had this. If I had this house or this job or this relationship with this person that looks just like this, you know, or what have you. It's if only I had. But God didn't tell us that I'm going to give you one thing and that's going to make you content. He said, I've given you my son and that's going to make you content. That is all that you need. He is all that you need. And all this other stuff is, you know, there's blessing, there's things that He didn't say you won't have anything. He just said, just trust me every day. Trust that I will sustain you and I will take care of you. Just trust me. I want to look in Numbers at this story in the Old Testament that we read, and it really speaks of some issues that they had because God was taking care of them. And when I read this, as I go through this, I just want you to think that about your daily life and God, what He's done for you and what He is doing for you each day, and think about, am I being content and satisfied with what He's doing in my life? In Numbers 11:4, it says, now the mixed multitude who were among them yielded to intense craving. So the children of Israel also wept again and said, who will give us meat to eat? We remember the fish which we ate freely in Egypt, the cucumbers, the melons, the leeks, the onions, and the garlic. But now our whole being is dried up. There is nothing at all except this manna before our eyes. Now, let me tell you here, this manna, you know what manna is? They said it was like coriander seed, and the way they described it is, this was a miracle that was being placed before them every single morning, being placed at their feet, just down on the dew of the morning, this blessing of sustenance, of food that God was giving them, and it was sustaining them. Now, I look at this scripture and they say, our whole being is dry. I'm dried up. You get the feeling that like, you know, you see in like a cartoon and somebody hasn't, you know, it's all withered and dried up and all this stuff. But that's not the case. See, this manna that God had given them had sustained them. It had not only sustained them, but they were strong, they were healthy, and they weren't physically dried up, but because of their craving, because they just wanted more, because they looked to the past and said, oh, we had fish and leeks and garlic and melons and cucumbers, all these different, oh, if we only had that, we would be content. If only we had those things. Just give me a little garlic to put on my manna, or a little fish to mix in the manna, or so, you know, I just need more than what you're providing me, God. I mean, I know you're doing this miracle and providing this amazing bread from heaven before my feet every day, but can I have more? And I mean, I don't know about you, but as I read this story, it just amazes me because this stuff showed up every morning, just laid before them, this bread of heaven, and they couldn't keep it more than a day because God miraculously did it in a way that if they tried to keep it, that it would spoil, except for the day before the Sabbath, and he said, I will let you do this because I want you to not have to gather it up on the Sabbath. So I don't know about you, but it's not just this stuff, showing up and you can say, oh, well, it just, it's here and it might be God, might not be. No. He made it spoil because he didn't want them to gather it up and hoard it, but then he said, but on this day, I want you to gather for 2 days so that you don't have to gather. I mean, this is a miraculous work of God. Now, it's not fish and it's not garlic and cucumbers and these things, but it's a sustaining food that is the bread of heaven. And as we look at our lives and say, God, you're sustaining me, you're giving me what I need daily, but I mean, make it better, God. I mean, are we saying, make it taste a little better. Make it a little more fancy, God. He said, I am sustaining you. I am taking care of you. See, he did this in a way so that they couldn't get greedy and hoard up this manna for themselves. And because you know how it is. And look, it's just the way it is. If we get something, we want to collect it. And then when we collect it, we can say, hey, I've got more than you've got. Or, hey, I'll sell this to you for a good price. Because I know that you need and I know that I have. But God said, no, I'm going to sustain you each day. Can you be content in what I'm giving you in this amazing, miraculous blessing that I'm giving you each day? And not covet more, covet something else. It's interesting. I don't know about you, but I may have learned this and I may have forgotten it. But manna, do you know what manna means? Whenever they saw the manna placed on the ground before them, they said, what is this? And manna means what? It's like, what? What? How many of us are like that? Is God is placing things before us and it's not what we think that it should be or think that it was going to be. And we're like, what? What? Manna? He's like, yeah. It's going to keep you strong and it's going to keep you full and it's going to get you through the day. Can you be content with what I'm giving you? Can you just live on me and my bread that I'm placing before you each day? Or are you going to look to something else or need something bigger and better? Can you just look to me? Just look to me. See, they had enough manna for every day. See, he gives us grace for the day. He doesn't give us that grace for the future. He doesn't lavish us with some big thing because he knows. He knows that we'll misuse it. I'm not saying he's not going to bless you. He will. But just think about this. I mean, has anybody ever said, if I just won $10 million, I could just live the rest of my life and be fine. I will be fine. And the next day you go buy a $10 million house and you're like, wait a second. How am I going to, you know what I'm saying? You think it's going to be great. It will sustain you, but that's not how we actually live. We get a bunch and then we'll use a bunch and not have it. And so God says, I will take care of you, but trust me day to day. Trust that I will bless you and take care of you. So they get to the point where they're complaining, right? And they're complaining at the doors to Moses' tent. They're not having a good time. Again, I tell you that they were healthy, they were fine, but they just had this craving for something else. So at this time, God's mad. Moses, he's mad. And so here's what happens. Verse 18, then you shall say to the people, is what God's saying, consecrate yourselves for tomorrow, and you shall eat meat, for you have wept in the hearing of the Lord, saying, who will give us meat to eat? For it was well with us in Egypt. Therefore the Lord will give you meat, and you shall eat. You shall eat not 1 day, nor 2 days, nor 5 days, nor 10 days, nor 20 days, but for a whole month, until it comes out of your nostrils and becomes loathsome to you, because you have despised the Lord who is among you, and have wept before him, saying, why did we ever come out of Egypt? So he says, God's like, you want something to eat? I'm going to give you something to eat. I will give you something, and I'm going to give you so much that it's going to disgust you, that it will come out of your nostrils, and you'll be throwing up. You'll be like, God, what's wrong with us because we're throwing up and it's coming out? But see, God understood. I mean, of course he understood something, but the people didn't understand who they were as human beings. And I say this to us, see, because whenever we want something, when we get it, it doesn't satisfy. See, the only thing that satisfies is Jesus. We got to figure out what we want and what we need. Because we want things, but we need Jesus, right? We need him. He's the only thing that we need. And when we want something, we get it, and oh, it's good today. But now tomorrow, I need something else. No, you don't need it, you want it. It's never good enough. It'll either need to be bigger, that same thing, or that craving will transfer to something else. And you'll say, no, I need this other thing. And see, Jesus knew. He's like, I'm going to give you this meat to eat. You're going to have great meat. I mean, if it was from God, I'm sure it was perfect, right? But he knew that the people wouldn't be satisfied with just eating that little bit of meat that he gave them. Can you think about this with me, that he gave them meat, and I imagine that they could have just eaten just enough to be happy and satisfied each day that he gave it to them, right? But apparently, just like us, they craved it so much that they couldn't just eat a little bit. It was like a buffet of meat and sustenance from God. So they just kept shoving it in their mouth. Am I getting too graphic for you guys? Are you okay? They just, it's like meat. I'm eating. God knew. He's like, I've given you this bread from heaven, but when you get what you want, you're just going to keep craving it and craving it and craving it until it makes you sick. Because it's not what I wanted for you. It's not what I was giving to you. It's something that you wanted. And it will never satisfy, so you'll keep putting it in. You'll keep eating. You'll keep wanting until it just tears you up inside, till it makes you sick. They were coveting something else. They weren't satisfied with the manna that God had given them. There's a story about Abraham Lincoln. It says, Abe Lincoln was walking down the street one day with his 2 sons. Both were crying. What's the matter with your boys? Asked someone passing by. He said, exactly what is wrong with the world. I have 3 walnuts, and each of them wants 2. 2 boys, 3 walnuts. They wanted him to have 4, so both of them would have 2. I know you guys don't relate with this, but I totally do. Because I have 4 kids, right? And I may have a little issue with buying M&Ms, peanut M&Ms. I'm just being open with you, okay? So I have an issue with peanut M&Ms. And so out of the graciousness of my heart, that when I'm with my kids, I bless them with M&Ms, right? And I could have 9 M&Ms and give each of them 2, and there's 1 left over. And so they're fighting. I want the extra M&M. Give me the extra M&M. I'm the oldest. I should have it because I'm your oldest. I'm the youngest. I should have it because I'm your baby. I'm your oldest daughter. I'm the middle child. I should have it because I'm always overlooked. There's so many reasons. But they fight, And I'm like, I just gave you 2 M&Ms. Can you not be content with what I've given you? Can you be content with what God is placing before you daily? He's asking, he said, look, don't look to things. Don't look to stuff to make you happen, to make you happy. That something happens to you and it's going to save everything. He said, the only thing that's going to save you is me. Seek after me. Seek after what I have for you. Look to me, and I will give you the things that you need. How do we overcome covetousness, wanting more? We have to set our hearts, set our eyes on things above. Colossians 3:1. It says, if then you were raised with Christ, seek those things which are above, where Christ is, sitting at the right hand of God. Set your mind on things above, not of things on this earth. And then in verse 5 it says, therefore put to death your members which are on earth, fornication, uncleanliness, passion, evil desire, and covetousness, which is adultery. See, he's saying here, he's like, you don't understand these things of the earth, these things that you say, oh, I want, I need, this will make it better. They never satisfy. They won't take care of you. They won't sustain you. The only thing that will is setting your eyes on God, on who he is, on what he has for you, and being content with what he's done for you. That he's died on the cross for your sins. Just seek after him, and he will be all that you need. See, our hearts, it's an issue, but they're with things that we treasure, right? Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. It's just a fact of this human life. What we treasure is where our heart's going to be. And God, he wants our hearts to be with him. So it's him that we need to treasure, not things, not something that will make us happy, but him that will make us happy and that will sustain us. He's all that we need. The only thing that we should want is him, because he says, then I'll give you what you need. Amen? We want things, but we need Jesus. He's all that we need. Paul in Philippians 4, he said, I know how to be abased, and I know how to abound. Everywhere and in all things I have learned both to be full and to be hungry, both to abound and to suffer need. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. I love this. He says, I've learned. See, at this point, I think he's an older man. He's in jail. He's not doing so hot, in earthly circumstances. And he had been well off before and been healthy and young and vibrant and all these things. And so he's been along the road in his life for a while. And he could say, it was better off back then, back when I had fish and melons and garlic. He said, but no, all I need is the bread of life, the manna from heaven that God has given me. He said, I know how to be abased. I know how to have and I know how to not have. But I love this end statement. You can't say this without the end. And he says, because I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. It's not because he can do it on his own. It's not because he can make it or because he's strong. He just understands that the only thing that he needs is Jesus. He said, I am content in Jesus, in him, and what he's done for me. See, God gives us not the grace for tomorrow, but the grace for today. He sets before us those things that we need today to get through the day. Because like with the Israelites, if he gives us all that we need for the next week or month or year, we would waste it, we would squander it. But he says, I've given you the grace for the day. In the New Testament, Jesus, after he fed the 5,000, and he's talking with his disciples and with people, and he's talking with them, and they're wanting some sign from him. Some, hey, we want more. And so he takes them back to the Old Testament and tries to teach them a lesson. They don't really get it. Some of his disciples walk away. It's like, we just don't understand it. But they were wanting, they said, hey, why don't you just perform this miracle? Like, give us this bread every day. Can we just have this manna from heaven? He's like, it's standing right in front of you. In John 6:32, it says, then Jesus said to them, most assuredly I say to you, Moses did not give you the bread from heaven, but my Father gives you the true bread from heaven. For the bread of God is he who comes down from heaven and gives life to the world. Then they said to him, Lord, give us this bread always. And Jesus said to them, I am the bread of life. He who comes to me shall never hunger, and he who believes in me shall never thirst. And you know what he goes on to say? See this, it goes along with this communion that we took. He goes on and tells them, he's like, you don't understand. If you eat my flesh and drink my blood, that it will be all that you need. That is where life is. And they're like, what? What is this? But they don't understand. See, the manna, what Jesus was saying, the manna in the Old Testament, this is the Israelites. That was the bread from heaven. And it sustained them for a while, but even those people eventually died. But I'm telling you that now I am the bread of life. That God has sent not this manna, this thing that's like coriander seed, but he sent his son to come and die on the cross for you. That I will. They didn't get it yet. Of course, it hadn't happened. And it's like tearing them up. I have no idea what's going on, Jesus. You're not making any sense. He's like, just please understand that is who I am. Not manna that will spoil, not manna that will sustain you for a while, which is a blessing from heaven in the Old Testament, but I am the bread of life. And if you come and take of me, if you seek after me, if you don't covet these other things, but are content to know me, to seek me, to look to heaven and what God has for you, and to know that I am all that you need, that you will never want. And that as you come to me, this bread of life that I am, it doesn't spoil and it doesn't sustain you for a day, but it sustains you for eternity. This bread of life, you come before me, you seek after me, and you will live forever. That's what he's saying. He says, be content in who I am. That God has sent me here to die on the cross for you, so that you could have this relationship with God and with me, so that we could be closer than ever before. Just seek after me. Amen? Can we realize that all we need is Jesus? People have asked me to come over to my house, or I had a guy come to, look about putting a fence in my backyard. And he's like, well, how long are you going to stay here? And I have this spiel that I always say is like, well, we want to stay till our kids are out of school because we like the schools. They're close. They're good. We don't want to take them to a different school. But, if God calls us somewhere, we're going to go. We're going to go. And it's easy to say. I know we all probably have said something like that, and I say that. But when it comes to the time, can we be content where he has us, but then when he's placed something else before us and says, okay, take this next step. Go this way. Can we be content with what he's placed before us? Not say, what is this? Not say, it doesn't look like what I thought it would look like, or where you were going to ask me to go, or how you were going to ask me to live. But God, I am content in who you are. Amen? Why don't you stand with me?